So I read a book this week on church revitalization. Actually, that's the title of the book, Church Revitalization. The subtitle is a Pastoral Guide to Church Renewal. It's by a man named Rusty Small. But anyway, the book on church revitalization. Church revitalization, that is basically a technical term to talk about when you have a church that's declining, perhaps dying, not a lot of people left, maybe has some problems, whatever the case, and how do you really revitalize it? And thinking through those kind of issues, and that's what this book is about, aimed primarily at pastors that maybe are coming into a new situation for this express purpose to revitalize the church, and he deals with some things that you need to think about. It's a very practical guide. I'm pretty sure, I believe I saw that the author actually went through church revitalization at the church where he currently is pastor years ago, but he also teaches at Southeastern, and this book sort of reads like it's probably came out of his class notes, and because it's very well organized, and he thinks through and is trying to cover the whole field. And so I think it was a very helpful book. I won't walk you through chapter by chapter, but one of the most helpful chapters I thought was the chapter right in the middle of the book on the plan. What is the plan? This is where he really gets into the nuts and bolts of doing it, even though because that is so broad and there's so many different reasons why a church needs to be revitalized, and a lot of different directions you can go, and what needs to be emphasized and all the rest. He goes through some of those possibilities. So he talks about a prayer focused revitalization. Now, of course, he says that every church needs to be praying, and we can do better with praying in our prayer life and our corporate prayer life and all the rest, but sometimes that needs to be the real focus that would really revitalize the spiritual well-being of the church, or maybe it's a worship focused revitalization. And what he means by that is the actual main worship service of the church. Thinking through how can we be more intentional about this. I almost said, how can we make it better? And maybe he uses that terminology, but he really, it's not like, hey, let's, I don't know what I'm trying to say there. He's basically wanted to say, let's think through the worship service. Let's think through how we can be more intentional with it. We can improve this and the aim of that we're trying to do. I'm trying to avoid using sort of some secular marketing language. He doesn't, because he doesn't use that language of providing a better experience for the customer experience or anything like that. But he does say, okay, what are we doing, and how can we be more intentional about it? Maybe it's as simple as the experience of people coming in and greeters, or having a bulletin, or the music, the quality of music, or the content of the sermon connecting with the music, and different things like that maybe needs to be the focus. Or he talks about evangelism focused revitalization, where you're really getting more intentional about your evangelism. And so all of these things, and he mentioned several others, all of them are things that a church ought to be doing all the time. But he says, if you're trying to revitalize a church, you need to focus on a few of those areas and make some concrete plans. And then he has another chapter, execute, of saying, how are we going to accomplish this? What is the strategy? What is the plans? How can we go back and see, are we doing a good job of this or not? So it's that kind of book. It's not a cookie cutter approach. I reviewed a book entitled that just a few weeks ago on this very topic of church revitalization. He doesn't do that, but he does talk about principles that would apply, that whatever your area is. One of the chapters talks a lot about learning the history of the church, and the history of the community, and some of the problems that are there. And so nothing in the book was sort of earth-shattering, and I like books like that. Actually, I do enjoy books that are reading and like things that I've never thought about before. Those are interesting books. But sometimes you just want to have a book that will help you think through things logically and be organized. And so everything was good and good advice. One of the things you could tell was that this guy's been through it before, because the last chapter is on church conflict. And you could tell he was talking out of experience, I believe. And he talks about church conflict and people pushing back on the church revitalization efforts all the way through pretty much every chapter. He mentions something along those lines. And so I thought it was very helpful. Now, there was a couple of things that I'm like, hey, I never really thought about that before. And one of them I'll mention is that in the early days of church revitalization, really while you're putting the plans together and the strategy and what direction are we going to go, he talks about talking to the members, sort of whether you do that in an informal way or a formal way with a survey and all the rest, whatever. He says, take what they are saying. He doesn't use with a grain of salt, but he does say, you need to kind of weigh that, because think about it. And here's where I'm like, he says, think about it. If that church was already had the wherewithal to really identify their problems and knew how they could overcome them, they'd have done it already. Right? And so sometimes the presenting problem is not the real root problem. And so I thought that was very helpful. And the reason why, and I wasn't going to put this in this video, but I will go ahead and mention the reason why I am interested in why some of these book reviews on church replanting and church revitalization and all the rest is because I'm currently going through that process with a sister church here in our community that recently closed down. I won't go into all the details of that, but me and a few of the former members, and there's just a handful of former members, and so this really is more of a total replanting of a new church than revitalizing an existing church. But with that core group of people, working with them and wanting to see where can we go from here and what kind of strategy, and so I'm reading some of these books, not really to kind of look for some kind of secret sauce or some kind of step 1, 2, 3. I'm not kind of into that. I don't think that is it works and its approach, but reading books like this do help you think through how you can be more organized, and how you can think clearly about what you are accomplishing and what you don't want to do, and maybe thinking through some pitfalls, and just getting some encouragement. I was more encouraged than anything else. It wasn't really a whole lot of new knowledge that I've really never thought about before, other than, like I said, organizing it in a good way and thinking through it more clearly. But it was an encouragement that this can be done. There's a lot of people that are doing it. It's not a hopeless case. And so I'm hopeful for the church that we are trying to relaunch and replant here in Hancock County on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. It's Bayside Baptist Church. If you're watching this video and would like to pray for us as we do that, I pastor Lakeshore Baptist Church, which is really only a couple of miles away. I've been there here as pastor for nearly 30 years, started in 1994. And so I'm familiar with this church. I'm familiar with the area. I'm familiar with the neighborhood, familiar with the community. And they have some facilities right in the heart of this area, in this neighborhood, that many of us are wanting to replant there or revitalize this existing work. So I'm excited about it. And so I read this book and figured I'd share it with some of you that are watching my book reviews on the YouTube channel. But I'll go ahead and end this video in particular because, as always, I want you to get off of YouTube and go read a book.